Hi, how are you today, Chiara?
Hi, Tammy. I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So nice that we finally connected. So I have here Chiara Maripodi, and she's Dance of the Soul Transformation Center in Carlsbad, California.
Yes, it's so nice to be here with you, Tammy. Thank you for inviting me on your show. I really appreciate it. And yes, I'm with Dance of the Soul Transformation Center, but I also do other things. So I also do animal communication, and I am the founder of the Society for Animal Consciousness.
Oh, okay. Animal consciousness.
Yes.
That's cool. Is this the right phone number if people want to contact you? 442-222-1354?
Yes, that's the right number for me.
And they can find you, and I'm going to put this all in the notes, but I just want to put that out there. Chiara, ChiaraMarrapod @hotmail.com. Oh, don't forget the I after the D.
Yes, it's Chiara Maripodi, my full name, @hotmail.com.
All right, sounds good. So my first question, and we have to speak loud. I don't think there's too much noise out there, but just in case.
All right, I got you.
Okay, because some of my listeners are a little hard of hearing. Just in case. Thank you. I'm usually very soft-spoken myself. I know the saying that there's no wrong answer or wrong question, but this seems to be an obvious question, but still a simple and fun one. How old were you when you realized you could communicate with animals? If you want to tell a quick story.
So, I think that's a really good question, because here's the story. So when I was 2, I would have wild birds land in my lap and in my hands.
Wow.
And so obviously I was 2, I didn't really know what that meant. But as time went on, I started to realize that I was really connected to animals. And that animals were connected to me. They wanted to be with me, and I wanted to be with them. So it was really an early age that I began to have a natural affinity to animals, and wild and domestic, it didn't really matter.
Wow. So they can tell something about you.
Well, they do. Animals generally know when they can trust a human and when they're being seen. That's the most important thing for anyone, not just an animal, but even humans. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. And I think when they feel safe, because safety is an important factor, and when they feel safe, that really makes a big difference, and they can trust.
Yes. That's true. Tell my listeners briefly, well, I think you did, but you can expand what you do if that's possible. And I know we could probably talk about it for hours, and there's so much to it, I would imagine. Depending on the situation and the animal and the owner, environment, etc. Is that correct? And please expand.
So, what I do really is to connect people with animals in a way that they haven't thought about before.
Okay.
So, it really is about a heart coherent space and connecting with our hearts and connecting with the hearts of the animals, because that's where they live. They live in the purity of the love.
It's beautiful.
It's very, very beautiful.
It's really sweet.
And so when I connect with the animals, and I teach people to do this because they have a deeper connection and relationship with their animals. And that's been the feedback, and not only looking at, for example, if they have trauma, because that's my speciality. If all animals have trauma, generally speaking, because they've been taken from their moms too soon, that's a big theme.
Yes.
And just domestication is very different to what the essence of the animal is, who they feel that they're connected with. So, for example, they don't have an eye. We have an eye, and we have an ego, but they don't. But there's an instinctual feeling of what a dog, for example, does and how they act, or a cat. So when they're in domestication, sometimes this isn't well clarified in the human-animal bond. And so we have things that happen that are not intentional, and some are intentional.
Of course.
So when we have trauma, which I work with, they shift immediately, which is pretty amazing. So it's really about loving them for who they are, where they're at. And it's the same with humans. It's exactly the same thing. But we've forgotten how to do that. And so I'm here to guide people and remind them and give them the tools.
That's so nice. I was just curious offhand, that's not one of my questions, but somebody say they can't come to you or can't reach out for whatever reason, is there a simple tool that person can just get to their heart connection?
They can breathe through their heart chakra. That is a really powerful, and this is scientifically proven. This isn't just through experiential or anecdotal kind of information. It really is scientifically proven that the heart chakra and the heart has the greatest electromagnetic field in the body, and you can actually use it for healing. And a lot of the indigenous populations would use that along with their hands. So that would be one tool that I would suggest. Connect to your heart and breathe through your heart, and notice what happens physiologically, and notice what happens with the animal, because they will follow suit. So on YouTube I have a very short video about how to meditate with your animal, and basically it's just very simply the breath. So
true.
Yes,
yeah, the breath.
It's the breath with the heart. When you marry those two things together, you have basically the ingredients for changing your state.
Simple as that. Just a new habit to learn.
It's a new habit to learn, yes. We've forgotten it, but yes.
Yes. What brings you joy and heartfelt connection? If you have a small story to tell.
I have so many stories. Do I have to choose?
I know, right?
Okay. I have to say I think it's my horse. So I adopted her, but she also adopted me, and she chose me. And it's a very beautiful story in the sense that she had a lot of trauma. She's an ex-race horse. She had PTSD. She was thin, and she just was very depressed and anxious, if you could call it that in human terms, because they have a different way of feeling. So, she chose me and I chose her, and it was almost like falling in love again. And, I never thought you could fall in love with an animal or a horse. Most especially horses have a special kind of a feeling about them, but it was very much a soul-to-soul connection. So for me, even though it was something that it was a lot of responsibility, taking on a horse, especially one that has PTSD, has been through so much, it's a great responsibility to do that, any type of rescue. So, but honestly, the love that we share for each other, it's absolutely plain to everybody who sees us together, and the connection is so amazing. It warms my heart just thinking about her. Just thinking about her.
It's a nice story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for asking.
Are your parents psychic, or any of your family members that you know of, if we want to put a term on it?
I think my granddad may have been, if you want to call it, psychic. He had experiences with unseen energies, which are sometimes termed as ghosts. In the World War, when he said something was taking my sheets down, and there was no one there, and he'd switch the light on, or he'd have the candle or whatever he was using at that time, and there was no one there. But then he spoke to this invisible figure, and they resolved something, and it stopped. So yes, I think my granddad was psychic, if you want to call it that.
I would think so.
Yes.
I remember you talking about a very sweet cat. What was the name of this cat? And please talk just, briefly about...
So Smudge. Smudge is the most beautiful tortoiseshell. I'm biased, but she's the most beautiful tortoiseshell that I've ever met. And when she came into my life in 2006, she reactivated my animal connectivity. Because society can be quite cruel if you have certain gifts or abilities. And so I shut them down for a little while. But she reactivated them, and she, I always say, is my master teacher. And she's not with us anymore. She's passed on, but she's still my master teacher.
Yes.
And I'll tell you a little story that she gave me one. Well, she basically taught me. I remember I was going through some kind of transformation, and when, you have releases and you have things. And so I had all these tears coming down, and we were in a room together. She was always next to me. And at some point, she came up and she hit her paw on my arm, and in my head, I heard her say, "You're done, it's complete, you can stop now."
Okay.
So she was always keeping me on track. My master teacher was always keeping me on track.
Fantastic.
She's amazing. She's amazing, and she taught me the most important lesson that I ever learned. And she said to me, nonchalantly, I have to say to you, in my head, I heard, and she was looking at me, so, there's that connection that you have. And what I felt and heard was, I'm a part of you and you're a part of me. And it took me a little while to figure out what that actually, the wisdom of that. Because it's true, deep. It's very deep. Animals are a part of us and we're a part of them, and most especially when they meld with their human, when they choose a human, there is a melding that happens energetically. So you'll notice sometimes that there will be some traits that you have that are reflected back to you. It's because of that melding. And so they are a part of us and we're a part of them.
Very nice. And to people that don't understand, there's some of us who can hear, and to explain that.
Okay, let me explain. So animal connectivity can be on many different levels. It can be feeling things in your body that somebody else feels, and sometimes that's called being empathic. It could be colors, it could be smells, it could be hearing something. And so when I say that I hear this in my head, it does feel like a voice, but it wasn't always there. It developed over time as I developed through the different feeling states. I call them feeling states. So the first one I developed was the empathic piece.
Okay.
So looking at, how did I feel? Is this feeling mine or is it not? So really it's a discipline and a cultivation.
Yes.
Trying to understand and not impose one's ideas upon anyone else, whether it's human or animal. Being respectful of that, but knowing when something is yours and when it's not. So there was a great teaching with that within itself. And knowing that and navigating that, other things began to come into play. So that's what I mean when I say I hear them in my head.
I understand, because I have all those experiences. I just know a lot of people, and I just like how you're able to explain it.
Oh,
perhaps better than myself.
Okay.
You lived all over the world, and you are from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
I also have lived in many parts of the world, and I know that opens us up to cultural experiences, etc. And we tend to be more open-minded and see people and animals as they are in their truest essence, as you stated.
Yes.
And form is my thought. You also do acupressure and...
Well, I'm also an equine specialist, but I do acupressure and I do a lot of trauma work, most especially for horses, cats, and dogs in captivity. I've done birds too. Okay. But we connect with wild ones too, which can be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Messages from them.
Yes.
If you'd like to expand on this, and that would be great. And you can share one or two examples, however you see fit for a story.
Okay. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. I was born in Africa. And, I'm so grateful for having this experience of having grown up in Africa, because it, as you said, it changes the way that you view things. First of all, travel within itself does that. You start to see different cultures and you start to see different realities and different narratives that are connected with those realities. And you remember how I talked about being enmeshed with the animals. But I think when you're living in a place or visiting a place, if you allow yourself, you can become enmeshed in the culture of that place. And that within itself is transformational. So when I was living in Africa, I had wonderful experiences growing up there. It was express to you the gratitude I have. And one of the stories, I have plenty of them from Africa,
Yes,
but one of the wonderful stories I have is when I went to a safari lodge with my family.
Wow.
We'd go often. It was my favorite thing to do. And
it's on my list.
Yes, and you must.
Okay.
We got there and there was an orphaned warthog. So I don't know if you know about warthogs. They're hogs, so they tend to, be in the muds and that kind of thing, and they can be quite dangerous. They have 2 tusks when they're adults, so in the wild, any animals, need to be respected, but they especially can be quite dangerous.
Okay.
So this one was orphaned, so the game rangers at the lodge had taken this, it was a male, so had taken him in. I arrived at this lodge, and this warthog would not leave me alone. I was in my early 20s, maybe a teenager, early 20s, and it would not leave me alone.
A wild one.
Well, he was orphaned,
well, yes,
so
orphaned.
He was at the lodge.
Yeah.
He wouldn't leave me alone. We got into the chalet, and there was no way that I was going to leave that chalet. They had to come and physically remove him because he was guarding me. He was guarding me. He was at the door, and there was like a little iron gate at the chalet, but my parents could go out. It was great, but there was no...
Like the protector or
the
something.
Protector.
Yes.
He owned me, literally. That's what he thought. He owned me. That's what it looked like, He owned me. So, I've had so many wonderful experiences, even in going on a canoe trip and being ambushed by a hippo, and
wow.
And being in a tent, and there was an animal sleeping next to me the whole night, and I'd say to the other lady in the tent I was sharing with, and she said, "How did you sleep?" And I said, "I didn't sleep a wink. Did you?" And she said, "Oh, I slept well." I'm like, "Well, I had something that was at my tent, leaning on the tent," and I was like, "Why always me?" In those days, I wasn't as aware of what it was. It was still, the gift was there, but it was latent, and there were bits and pieces coming out, and so it was interesting. And looking back, I'm like, wow, those were great experiences. I could have, embellished them, but anyway.
It was always there.
Yes, it was always there.
Until you were ready.
Until I was ready. I mean, in terms of the acupressure, let's talk a little bit about the acupressure.
Okay.
Acupressure, it's based on traditional Chinese medicine. So the same principles apply when you apply it to animals. Obviously, the points may be in different positions based on the physicality of the animal concerned. But, I've had such wonderful experiences with acupressure and the energy healing together, because what happens is they meld together, and I can see and sense internally what's happening with the animal. So we'll do the acupressure, but there is an order to things, and sometimes there is maybe some energy healing needs to happen before or after, and that does happen. And in all of the communications and animal acupressure sessions I've had, the animal has been absolutely a full participant. And I'll give you a few examples. I have 2. And in fact, these are pretty interesting. One of them, the horse, he wasn't doing too well. He had a bit of a dull coat. And so his owner asked me to come and do an acupressure session, and we did. And during the session, every time we completed certain points, he would go and drink water. So we'd wait for him. And when I would talk to the owner about certain things, and I would say, this is the feeling I'm getting from the horse, he would nod his head. And she'd look at me and she said, "Chiara, is he actually nodding his head?" I said, "I think he is, yes, he is agreeing with us." That, it's a movement that's important. And so throughout that whole session, we waited for him to have the water and integrate. And on the other side of the fence, he had a friend. And the friend would come and line up at the fence only when we're doing acupressure. And he actually had a release. And then he went away. And so the owner said to me, "Chiara, do you think that the animals are getting something else from you while you're doing this?" And I said, "Absolutely."
Of course.
So
it's all energy.
It's all energy, and they know it. And when I was doing my acupressure training, I went to Colorado to do it. I used to go on safari. I called it safari. At night, I was living at the ranch for the few days that I was there to do my practicum. And they had a lot of rescue horses. So I used to go and see them after dinner because it was just...
Why not?
Exactly. And there were a few of us that would go together, and they would line up. they would come one by one to the fence. And you can do acupressure without being there. You don't have to physically, especially with cats, they don't like to be touched.
Oh, yes.
So they would come one by one and then leave when they got what they wanted.
So nice.
I have another story about a cat which I think is interesting.
Okay.
So this cat, I always get pictures sent to me, whether I can do them by distance or I can do them in physical reality. So in physical reality, I always ask for a picture because I connect before and we have a little conversation. And I got there and I knew this cat had a neurological problem.
Yeah.
And I knew that the liver needed help. But this cat was really interesting because he was very overt and he did not want to be touched with any type of energy healing or acupressure. So that's what we did. And when I went to actually do something on his liver, he got up and he whacked me on the arm and he said, "Stop, we're done with that."
Wow.
But in physical reality, what was interesting is that his human, his owner, I called him the human, his owner had never had anyone converse or dialogue with their animals on their terms. And she was just flabbergasted. She said, "I've never seen him interact with anyone like that." And I said, "Yes.
Of course.
Of course."
Cute story.
It's cute. It's cute.
I like the saying nervous system to the nervous system in your communication healing approach. Can you tell us what that means? And I do know animals also experience trauma. You've already stated this. And you already told some stories as well. But the nervous system and nervous system?
So, nervous system to nervous system is the way that I describe animal communication when you first start. Because, and in fact, with any communication that I do, I always respect the animal where they're at and where the human is at.
Correct.
So, a nervous system to nervous system means that I'm feeling the animal and where they're at in my nervous system.
Because you tune in.
I tune into them and I attune to where they're at so that I can gather information about what's the most pertinent thing at this moment in time, in this window of time. Because you can't do everything at once. Whether it's human or animal, it really is important to have an order and to have a timing for things. And you can't force or push things, most especially with animals. They'll walk away. If they don't trust you or they're not sure, or if they're deep into trauma and they can't get out of it, you need to understand that and work with them at their point, where they're at. So the nervous system to nervous system is really an understanding of where they're at in their bodies, because they live in their bodies.
And I like how you ask permission,
Always.
like you're so respectful. And that could be, an energetic, you're just tuning in. And
I always ask also the owners to give the animal permission to talk to me. That's one of the prerequisites. Have you mentioned this? Because the intention is what's important, and the animal will pick up on that because they'll pick up everything that comes via the heart.
That's beautiful. What does it mean when you say it's a privilege and honor to be a conduit? And can you tell our wise wisdom women what that means?
So, for me, when I go into any type of healing, whether it's human or animal, it's a privilege for me to hold space, to really be there, to allow another being to be who they are, where they are, how they are, without imposing projections from myself, from society, whatever the case is, and really allowing them to breathe. Because when we're allowed to do that, when we're seen like that, that's when transformation happens. Because once you're seen, then you can actually open. You are in safety and you can trust. And once that connection right there, and that's what I mean by connection, is right there in that moment, it's a gift. And so for me to be able to bring that first and foremost to any type of session I'm doing, and to come from that space, it's an honor and a privilege for me to do that, because the other person is reciprocating by sharing the gift of who they are.
It's true. They'll open up to you.
They open up.
And they'll heal.
Yes.
Well, thank you for being a conduit.
It's my honor to do that.
Yeah, and I'm sure your clients appreciate you as well as the pets
I believe
themselves.
they do. I believe they do. That's what they say.
I love your explanation of reality shift. I also agree how we have to think about animals differently, understand the left-right brain in the way you explain it best, organic thinking, animal wisdom, begin to see where you and another begin, and most importantly, living in the heart, like you stated at the beginning. If you want to talk briefly about this.
Okay, there's a lot of moving parts in that, but okay, so, reality shift for me is learning to think about animals in a different way. When we make the choice to do that, then we're aligning already with something that is outside of our comfort thinking zone, is what I'd like to call it. So that allows expansion. It also allows for us to breathe. Believe it or not, the body does respond. Here's the nervous system to nervous system aspect. The body responds to every thought that we have, to every feeling that we have, to every memory that is connected to a feeling that we have. So when we have music, it comes on, it brings up all these feelings. So when we decide to open ourselves to see an animal, a human, anything in a new way, and not to continually be, what's the word? The word would be to be driven by our habitual thinking. Now we can have a reality shift. And that really works in nicely with what organic thinking is. So organic thinking is beyond left and right brain thinking. So in traditional ideas, we've been taught that we have a left brain and we have a right brain and that they have separate functions. But actually, over the last 20 years, science has shown that these functions are not as clear-cut. They are enmeshed, and sometimes there are certain things like certain cognitive capacities that both the left and the right brain can do. There are some differences in the uses of the left and the right brain, so that's slightly different. So the left brain, from scientific perspectives, is really about grasping. So when you see a bird is grasping for something with its beak, it's using the left brain. Now when we are taking information in, we use the left brain. And what happens is, when we're not in organic thinking, I'm going to explain, we hold on to that and we make a story based on this with the little information that we have. Basically, we microscopically have looked at something and haven't zoomed out to look at the bigger context and the picture. That's what the right brain does. So the right brain is the seat of a more imaginative perspective. And so the right brain is able to take information from the left, to take it, contextualize it, and to really help to support, to expand it within the context so that we have more of a whole idea. And what's really important, part of organic thinking, is the heart. Now, I told you scientifically that heart coherence really is everything. Heart coherence, and the Heart Math Institute has found this, scientifically speaking, that really it's not a top-down process of thinking, it's a bottom-up. And bottom-up starts at the heart. The heart will register before the brain, and it sends information to the brain. It actually has a heart brain because it has neurons similar to the ones in the brain and similar chemicals. So with organic thinking, what we're doing and what I'm teaching with that at the Society for Animal Consciousness is to marry the left, the right, the whole brain with the heart. Once you do that, that really gives a way to be able to have the reality shifts that people are really looking for in their transformations. So that we can experience life differently and have a new type of aliveness. And that ties into being seen. It ties into the nervous system to nervous system first, and then we're going beyond in this way.
Yes. I love how finally science is coming, and saying something in the last 20 years. But it's something that's always been there, of course. It's just proving it to the public.
I guess, we can think about us moving and evolving through different ways of thinking as part of our growth as humanity, as a collective, and things are shifting, and they're shifting fast.
Very fast.
Yes.
If you'd like to speak briefly on animal-centric, emotions, body, mind, spirit, diet, and environment?
Yes. So what I mean by animal-centric is, traditionally speaking, when we talk about animals, and from a legal perspective, they're looked upon as property.
Yes.
So it's really, what use can we have for the animal in the human world? And that's a very human-centric idea. So it's focused on the human's needs. So when I talk about animal-centric, it's about, and it ties into what we've talked about, it's really about looking at the animal from their perspective. Who are they as a collective? Because they don't have an I, they're a group. So who are they? They have emotions, they have a body, right. They do have a mind, they're connected to the oversoul, the overarching group I, so to speak. And in physical reality, they need to have a certain diet because that's how they're designed. Nature's designed them to be carnivores, such as cats and even dogs. So if you give them a vegetarian diet alone, now you're introducing something that the body is not fully prepared for, and so there's going to be certain changes, and even the body won't be able to function optimally. And then the environment is very important. When we talk about animals, they're not like humans, they're not cerebral. They're in their bodies. They're definite, unless they've had huge trauma and they're sitting next to their body, because they jump out, like dissociate like we do. But that's very extreme. Or they'll come in and out, but that's a different thing. We're talking about, generally speaking, they're very connected to their environment, and they sense their environment very differently to us. They sense it very deeply. They use their 5 senses, and even just touching one hair on their body, they will sense that. So they're very acute. The hearing frequencies that they hear are very different to us. The smell. I remember my smudge, she was always full of wonderful tidbits. She once said to me, your sense of smell is off. And she's right. But because I can't smell what she can unless I attune and connect to the animals. So that's what I mean about being animal-centric. And that reality shift really is about shifting how we view animals from being useful to us and property. And I know that's very dry, and obviously many people who own animals, I don't really think anyone owns a soul, but
yes, I
generally speaking,
generally speaking,
they have animals, they know and they love their animals as family. But really making sure we don't project upon the animal human ideas, which are sometimes called anthropomorphic ideas. Ideas about how they feel, what they might like and dislike. Let the animals show us, and let them be themselves.
I like that.
And so that we can learn from them. There's so much to learn. We
can learn.
Yes.
It's beautiful. We definitely can learn. I like that message. And let's see. I know you mentioned it's important for animals to feel connection, being, rhythm, and freedom. Would you like to talk a bit about that? Or that's what we just spoke about?
We kind of did. I mean, they have their own rhythms, sense of being. We've talked about connection up to this point. So I think we kind of covered that one.
And I think we kind of covered about telling the dog's view, and connection is everything.
It is everything. And, I just want to make one point is, I can't give you a presentation here, but in my presentation, when I do give it, I show what the view is like, how it would look to be a dog. Say we have a landscape in front of us. The way that we see it, the way that they see it, or a cat sees it, or a horse sees it, is totally different. So when we start to look at them from an animal-centric perspective on those terms, we can begin to understand why they get scared, why they act a certain way, and then we can have more understanding, and it really deepens connection. Really deepens connection.
Nice. If there are 3 things you'd like our listeners to take away today, what would that be?
3 things. Wow. Okay. I think come from your heart. Breathe. Use the breath. Use the heart as your connection with your animal. they will follow you. All an animal really wants to do is to be connected to you, to be there for you, and to support you in any way, shape, and form that they can. So, and the third one is to allow them to teach you. Allow them to show you. Because they have great wisdom. It might not be in the way that we know, but that's the learning piece, and that's where the gift lies.
That'll be a great gift.
It is a great gift.
What is your spirit animal, or a book you recommend, or a saying you enjoy telling?
My spirit animal is feline. It's tiger. Yes, I very much. I'm a cat girl.
Yes.
I'm a cat girl. I think the horses, they call themselves the horse nation. They would probably say, but you're a horse too. But so it's interesting. A cat girl at heart.
Was this your birthday wish dream of communicating and helping animals and their owners? If not, what is your birthday wish dream that has come true? Or I'm sure we always are dreaming, but for just, small story.
Yes. This was always my wish. My birthday wish, really, it's evolved over time.
Yes, of course.
So I'm going to tell you what it's evolved to at this moment in time. And in fact, my birthday is this month, so it's actually quite interesting.
When is it?
Yes.
When is it?
It's on the 28th.
Okay,
yes.
Very nice.
So my birthday wish really is to teach the deep connectivity and a new reality and a new way for people to connect with animals. That's my greatest wish, and yes, it's come true.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Well, Chiara, we come to the end here, but not really. It's just the beginning. Tell my listeners how they can find you and more, information, a little bit more, because that's not just what you do. You have a little bit more explanation of what you do as well.
Okay. So I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I am also a life transitions coach. So I help people who are in transition, whether they're going through a divorce or they have other types of life transitions. I support them to find clarity within that and to strategize on recreating themselves, because every time you do have a life change, there is parts that need to be reimagined, reinvented, and because what we did before doesn't always work for the new situation, so then people get stuck.
Yes.
So what I do is I help people to disentangle that's what's holding them back and where they're stuck, and to put other things in place so that they can feel that they can move forward, that they have hope and they have light during these very difficult times. So that's one part, and that's where Dance for Soul Transformation Center comes in. The other part is, of course, the animal connectivity, and that is Wild Voices Talk. So the last one is I'm the founder of the Society for Animal Consciousness, and that's the education piece and really looking at the philosophy of what animal consciousness might be. We look at it from many different perspectives. We bring science in, we bring the organic thinking, because science needs organic thinking, actually.
True.
We bring in Rudolf Steiner's work, Goethe.
I'm familiar.
Yes, Goethe's work. And I work with a wonderful colleague of mine, Dr. Sarah Regan, and she's the Director of Education. So I have these different arms. And I'm also writing some books and articles. So you'll find me on the internet. But I have one website that they can go to, which is my full name. So it's Chiaramaripodi.com. So you'll have it online for them to find it. I don't need to. Or you can call me on my number of 442-222-1354, and I'd be happy to support any of you in any of the things that I do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy.